This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We're finding out more tonight about the man shot and killed Sunday by Winnipeg police. He is Nunavut resident Jordan Charlie. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, he'd just been released from custody here in Manitoba a week earlier. And a warning, this report contains details surrounding a fatal police shooting.
Jordan Charlie is the man shot and killed by Winnipeg police Sunday outside a Unicity shopping area. The 24-year-old spent his life in foster homes and group homes, a Northwest Territories court heard in September 2019. Nikki Komek-Suktasuk is the founding member and CEO of the Winnipeg-based Inuit Resource Centre, Tungasugit. The organization was trying to help Charlie after he was released in 2023 from a prison sentence.
Jordan was a kind person. He came to our organization and he was around other Inuit and he felt loved and supported. He was a human being. He was a man that had a troubled upbringing.
Parole board documents say he lived with addiction and has a long history of admission to hospitals and treatment centers for mental health, self-harm, and attempted suicide following a difficult childhood. You were exposed to addiction issues and violence. A February 2023 parole board document for Charlie's statutory release states, you have low-level cognition and have been diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Substance abuse further impacts on your mental health, and you tend to use violence as a means to deal with conflict and interpersonal issues. In September 2019, Charlie was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for 2 separate unprovoked attacks in Yellowknife, including one that was nearly fatal. Court heard Charlie stabbed another man in the neck and demanded his cannabis. Then, while in custody for that assault, he attacked a corrections officer in this incident captured on security camera at North Slave Correctional Complex. Court documents show Charlie has a history of criminal violence, including unprovoked attacks. He was released from custody in Manitoba last week on 18-month supervised probation. That was following a sentence for assaulting and cutting a staff member at Health Sciences Centre with a knife. Before letting him out, a judge said it was really sad and told court Charlie didn't have the easiest upbringing. That release was just 5 days before his fatal interaction with Winnipeg police after he allegedly stabbed an officer who has since been released from hospital in the neck. The deadly shooting is now being investigated by the Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba.
To the honourable member for Nunavut.
In an emergency debate in the House of Commons in September, Nunavut's NDP MP Lori Idlout called for action on the issue of police killings of Indigenous people. She says this latest death weighs heavily on her.
I think that his family deserves answers. His family deserves justice as well. I think that he was failed overall by the whole system.
Komek-Suktasuk says Charlie had trouble accessing other supports in the community when he was out of custody. A Manitoba court heard the eventual plan was for him to return to Nunavut because he was stuck in Winnipeg, living transiently or in shelters.
He was wandering the streets, trying to stay warm and not knowing he was helpless. He was hopeless.
Komek-Suktasuk is now working with Charlie's family to try and get his body back to Nunavut. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth is renewing calls for a province-wide youth addiction strategy. A new report is painting a stark picture when it comes to the current state of addiction services for young people and the lack of supports. CBC's Zubina Ahmed brings you more.
23-year-old Sunday Keskikapo from Opaskwayak Cree Nation has struggled in the past with substance abuse. They say a lack of access to addiction programs and shelters in northern remote areas was a barrier for many like them.
I had to essentially be extracted from my community to receive care that would keep me alive. So it's very important for me to advocate for that now, for youth who are still living that, because that is their reality right now. This isn't a past thing, this is right now.
For the report, 39 young people and more than 120 addiction service providers were interviewed. Sherry Gott, Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth, or MACY, says the province's current youth addiction system is largely ill-equipped. Some of the concerns include limited access to services, long wait lists, geographical barriers, and a lack of harm reduction services. She calls this report an urgent call for action.
We hope that this report will be used as a tool to provide awareness and also support to anybody that works in the system.
Alex Gemley, the systemic advocacy specialist from Macy, talks about the additional issues in youth addiction services.
These included limited communication between providers, siloed operations, frustration amongst organizations, gaps in training, education, and overall service capacity.
Macy researcher Jen Sanders says many of the youth said their addiction had a similar root cause.
Most youth connected their substance use to past trauma, including experiences of sexual exploitation, abuse, and poverty. They told us they use substances as coping mechanisms, or as one youth put it, to make memories go away.
God said advocacy requests for youth living with addictions have shot up in recent years. And between 2018 and 2023, the deaths of 56 children and youth have been related to possible drug overdoses. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The city of Winnipeg is facing a human rights complaint by two women who say not enough was done to locate their loved ones. Their complaint was filed with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission this month. They accuse the city and the police service of discriminating against missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and LGBTQ people. Sue Caribou is one of the complainants. Her niece, Tanya Niepanak, went missing in 2011.
Nobody cares to fight for them. They don't have a voice. And it's important that we are the voice for our loved ones.
Police searched for Niepanak's remains in the city-owned Brady Road landfill in 2012 for 6 days, but they didn't find anything. The human rights complaint says police put, quote, futile resources into locating her. Caribou's co-complainant, Elle Harris, is the daughter of Morgan Harris, one of 3 murdered First Nations women who are believed to be buried at the Prairie Green landfill. The province is planning a search of that landfill for their remains.
The city of Winnipeg is worried it could lose out on tens of millions of dollars in federal housing money. A new report warns the Housing Accelerator Fund might not continue beyond next year. The federal government promised the city more than $120 million to speed up housing construction in Winnipeg. But city staff are preparing for potential changes to federal priorities. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has promised to scrap the Housing Accelerator Fund, which he calls bureaucratic. Mayor Scott Gillingham says he would like the program to continue.
It's because of the fact that we need more housing built. And this fund has assisted us, is assisting the city of Winnipeg get more units built and make them available.
Canceling the program halfway through means the city would lose out on more than $60 million. To prepare for that possibility, city staff are prioritizing projects that already submitted applications in the last round of funding, and moving ahead with sweeping zoning changes it agreed to make in order to qualify for funding. Councillor Brian Mays says the city should consider pausing those plans.
We have to do this, and we have to do it by March to get the money. Well, if the money's not coming, that kind of takes away the motivation, and the deadline clearly is artificial.
With a federal election set to happen no later than next fall, the city is not making any funding commitments beyond what it expects to get for 2025. The opposition leader has promised to remove the GST from new homes. A Conservative spokesperson accused Winnipeg City Hall politicians of blocking housing, citing a court case that found city planners had treated Fulton Grove developer Andrew Marquess unfairly. In an email, Poilievre spokesperson Sebastian Skamsky wrote, "Giving them more money will not only fail to help, it will make the housing crisis worse." A rezoning hearing to allow 4 units on all city lots and up to 4 stories near frequent transit routes is expected in March. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Weather specialist Riley Lachuk in now. Riley, I've noticed our reporters' jackets are getting bigger. We're getting those big winter jackets as we see people outside because that deep cold's starting to set in.
Yes, especially in through parts of Westman, which I'll get into as we get through the evening tonight. We are looking at a partly cloudy sky. I know it took a while to get a little bit of clearing in the Westman region today, but a mix of sun and clouds by the end of the day, at least. In Winnipeg, The stratus cloud has been hanging on, continuing to hang on, bringing us a cloudy sky. Although I will point out, I did see the sun very briefly at like 1 o'clock this afternoon when I looked outside. So there was a couple peaks of sunshine as expected through the afternoon hours today. Minus double digits in the west, much colder temperatures set in. In fact, Brandon, this was your temperature at the start of the day today. We did fall as we got through the day today in the Westman region. Winnipeg, we got up to -9 today. You can really see where that cloud cover has kept us under a bit of a blanket here. So -16 overnight, a little bit of blowing snow with those winds still 20 gusting 40 through the overnight. Can't rule out the odd snowflake as we get through the overnight period into tomorrow morning, starting at -15 tomorrow morning and ending up at about -12. So much cooler day tomorrow, below seasonal for this time of the year, Brittany, and the winds do stick around a little bit through the day tomorrow as well. We'll tell you how cold it's going to get when I come back.
Get ready to start plugging the car in. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
We have much more local news straight ahead. Stay with us. The NDP is paying tribute today to one of their colleagues. Education Minister Nello Altamar stepped away from his duties back in October for undisclosed medical reasons. For more, we're joined by CBC's Ian Fraze. So, Ian, what did Premier Wab Kinew say today?
He began by expressing his love and support for Nello Altomar, saying he's glad Altomar could hear these comments today. Kinew then said that Altomar made a mark as a politician, being instrumental in the creation of a universal school nutrition program. Then the Premier made a promise specifically to Altomar.
That's why in front of you, the member for Transcona, everybody here watching, I want to make this commitment. This session, we are going to bring in legislation to ensure that the universal school food program can never be repealed in Manitoba. And no government can ever cut it again. And I want you to know that we are going to call this law Nello's Law.
Just after this, the Speaker got choked up as he was going through some of the legislative business. The NDP government wouldn't comment any further Thursday on Altomar's condition and how he's doing.
All right, Ian, also in question period, we heard how municipalities are trying to convince the province to relinquish one of its powers. This is about setting of speed limits. So why are municipalities interested in this in particular?
Yeah, they feel when speed limits changes are necessary, they can do it faster. The RMs want the final say on the speed limits of provincial roads going through their municipal communities. They say it can take a year or longer for the province to rule on their requests. Conrad North with the PCs brought this up Wednesday in the legislature.
Municipalities, they are able to act quicker than provincial government. They know the importance of protecting safety within their communities, and speed zones within those communities need to be adjusted with quick response. So I think it's important to allow municipalities that opportunity.
But the province's transportation minister, Lisa Naylor, isn't prepared to relinquish control. She says the government is hiring more staff in the department to help deal with requests faster. Brittany.
All right, thanks, Ian. That's CBC's Ian Fraze. Canada's highest court will not hear an appeal from disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard. The Supreme Court of Canada has rejected a leave to appeal a request concerning his extradition to the U.S. That's where he faces sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Nygard wanted a judicial review of the order to extradite him after a Manitoba court rejected the request in May. The 83-year-old was found guilty last year of 4 counts of sexual assault in Toronto as well. Welcome to the holiday shopping season. Tomorrow's Black Friday is a red-letter day on the retail calendar, and the advertising blitz won't end until Boxing Day sales have wrapped up. The CBC's Nisha Patel takes a look at that holiday advertising and how it's crafted to get people to buy.
Black Friday has become one of the busiest shopping days of the year.
If I find a good deal, I feel it's great.
I did like 50% off on kids' clothes.
And it's not easy to escape the spending frenzy.
You get 2 or 3 emails from the same company a day, so sometimes I find it a bit too much.
Canadians are forecast to spend 10% more over the holidays this year than last. And with higher prices, many are looking for deals. 48% say they plan to shop on Black Friday. This marketing professor says sales season ads are designed using all kinds of tricks, from specific colors to countdown clocks, tapping into consumers' emotions to encourage buying.
I really need to buy this now, right now. So that's using the scarcity and trigger people's fear of missing out.
Canadian Black Friday tech deals are actually really good this year.
Social media is also adding pressure and shaping shopping decisions.
The companies use influencers, established trust and emotion to make those spill over to their brand.
Black Friday deals on Amazon Canada are finally here.
With personalized shopping links and instant access to online marketplaces, impulse spending can quickly spiral out of control.
I would say more often it's that we're trying to not feel something, and the act of spending or buying something allows us to temporarily push that feeling away.
It's 40% off plus buy 3 get 3 free.
Experts say there are other ways to get a pick-me-up, and taking a break from social media can be good for your wallet.
Turn off the phone. Maybe step out of the house, step out of the office, into nature, talk to a friend.
While getting a deal may feel good, not spending for spending's sake might end up feeling even better. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
The family of Chad Posthumus is holding a public celebration of life to honor the late professional basketball player. The event will take place December 6th at Springs Church on Lagimodiere Boulevard, starting at 3:30. Posthumus died November 20th, less than 2 weeks after suffering a brain aneurysm. Riley's back now. Riley, I have to ask, have you turned the heat on yet?
There's been a couple nights where I've had to flick it to make sure it comes on.
Yeah, I've had to kind of up it in the morning as well a little bit sometimes after it turns off. I'm like, not ready yet.
Not quite, yeah. We are looking at some cooler conditions in Winnipeg, certainly than we've seen the last few nights, at least, Brittany, and some cold, downright cold conditions in the west. I'll get right into it. There's quite a bit to talk about. So let's start with a look at the future cast here. So we have started to see a little bit of clearing to the west. So we will expect, as we get through the overnight period tonight, more like a partly cloudy sky into Westman. That's going to allow those temperatures really to cool down through the overnight period. Into the Red River Valley, we're hanging on to the stratus cloud. And the thing is, there just hasn't been any big weather events, any major high or low pressure systems really to push this out of the way. So it's just kind of been hanging around here. With that comes that slight chance again of some flurries, maybe through the overnight period. The best chance for that, though, coming into northwestern Ontario. So as we get into the day on Friday, again, peaks of sunshine through the Red River Valley, but a mainly sunny sky back to the west and much colder as we get through the day on Friday. You'll see, though, as we get into Saturday, we do start to see some of this filling in once again. So we're looking at a mainly cloudy day on Saturday once again. And as we get into Sunday, we are looking at more of a cloudy with sunny break. So kind of ebbing and flowing here. You can see this deep trough in the jet stream really sinking down into southwestern Ontario, parts of the U.S. Midwest sinking much colder than normal as well. And this really continues as we get through the weekend. But our pattern does start to change as we get into next week, particularly through Tuesday. You can start to see the jet stream starting to shift back north a little bit. This will warm our temperatures up as we get into mid next week. So I want to show you our temperature progression really quick here. So by the overnight period, looking at temperatures sinking into the -20s in the west, almost 10 degrees warmer in the Red River Valley and into parts of northwestern Ontario, starting close to -25 for Friday for Westman, and close to -30 even by the time we get into the morning on Saturday. So I wanted to show you quickly a bit of a temperature comparison, Grandin versus Winnipeg for the next 3 days. So Grandin looking at morning wind chills at -38 tomorrow, -42 for Saturday with temperatures close to -20. But for Winnipeg, we're -12 tomorrow, -10 for Saturday with a mainly cloudy sky. So not too far apart, just a couple hours down the highway, and we're seeing some very different weather conditions. And we are looking at some colder conditions into the Red River Valley as well, Brittany. -6 for Sunday, and I think we have a good chance of seeing some sun at least by the time we get to Monday.
Ooh, Brandon, we are feeling you right now. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
This festive home is in Crestview near the West Perimeter. We have to take another break. There is much more to come when we return. Stay with us. U.S. Border Patrol says 16 foreign nationals have been caught crossing into the U.S. from Canada in recent days. Donald Trump has threatened hefty tariffs on Canadian goods if illegal crossing isn't stopped. CBC News investigative unit's Jorge Barrera looks at why cracking down on the border is much harder than it may sound.
Your problem up here is the northern border.
That's Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan.
Canada's immigration rules are so lax. Right. Just about anybody can get to Canada. And, the northern border is wide open. You can just, either get across St. Lawrence River in 30 seconds.
Now Trump is threatening tariffs on Canadian goods if it doesn't stem the flow of illegal crossings. 19,000 people crossed the border through this region over 12 months, ending in September, more than the previous 17 years combined, according to U.S. data. By far the most of any point along the Canada-U.S. frontier. So what can Canada do?
It's technically not an offense in Canada to enter another country, so it's charged and prosecuted as a conspiracy to violate U.S. law.
Janine Plamondon is a prosecutor with the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. She's handled a number of human smuggling cases.
They're often complex cases. It takes a lot of work to put one of these prosecutions together.
She says these cases often need the help of U.S. law enforcement to be successful.
There's going to be evidence on both sides of the border because it's an offense that affects both of our countries.
For Canadian police officers, the current laws make it tough to stop U.S.-bound human smuggling.
Ours is very constrained. It's physically getting them across or being an active part of that organization if you can prove it in a conspiracy.
Retired Ontario Provincial Police Detective Matt Amer investigated cross-border human smuggling with a task force. To prove that conspiracy, Amer says you need to show there's a group with a clear leader with plans and actions to move people into the U.S. And that takes time, surveillance, resources.
It's maybe time for some update on the tools that the officers have in terms of legislation. Whether it's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, whether it's criminal code, perhaps something needs to be amended just to make it easier to prosecute.
Sometimes it does get a little frustrating. You spend so many hours on the road, you want to do things, you want to prevent things. It doesn't make sense.
CBC News accompanied the RCMP on border patrols along the Quebec-New York state border this summer. Officers doing what they could within the constraints of the law.
You're running around chasing your tail all evening, all night, all day, day in, day out.
But there's another challenge to border policing.
We don't have an officer stationed around every corner, and it's just physically impossible with the length of the border.
Mountains, rivers, lakes, thick forests, from sea to sea. Parts of these borderlands remain beyond the easy reach of patrols and the high-tech gaze of drones, cameras, and sensors.
That was the CBC's Jorge Barrera in Ottawa. Many small business owners are anxiously waiting, trying to figure out what to do if Trump follows through on his threat. Vanessa Lee now on how hard those businesses would be hit and on what Canadian companies could do to soften the blow.
Half of the Christmas trees leaving this farm each year end up in American homes. But if Donald Trump follows through with his tariff plan and it sticks, there are fears sales next season will drop.
The costs are still going to be there for production, but if at the end of the year we're not able to create or to have our sales, some people might just go out of business.
Last year, more than 1 million Quebec trees were exported to the U.S. Industry leaders say passing the cost on to customers is not an option.
Trees, they can't be too high because the consumer is just going to stop buying a natural tree and they're just going to switch to artificial.
From agriculture to retail, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business represents nearly 100,000 companies across the country. A quarter of them do business in the U.S., including this Calgary-based clothing brand. It was already considering setting up shop south of the border, a plan that could potentially be moved up significantly.
When the rules of the game shift, it's really difficult to, make a plan, right? Like we'd been planning on expanding quite substantially into the U.S. market over the course of the next year.
With at least 70% of Canada's exports going to America, some say this is a lesson to explore different trading partners.
We should try to expand
our exports to other countries, for example, Japan and Germany, because we get a lot of stuff from these two countries, but we don't send enough to them. So bring down the dependence on America.
It has been a bumpy year for many Canadian businesses who had to weather rail and port disputes, a Canada Post strike, and now the uncertainty of whether Trump's tariffs are a real threat or just a negotiation tactic. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Canada Post has been laying striking employees off as the labor action by more than 55,000 workers approaches the 2-week mark. The union calls the move a, quote, scare tactic and says it's looking into it. The Crown Corporation has confirmed the layoffs. Canada Post says with the collective agreement no longer in effect, the workers' conditions of employment have changed. The federal mediator suspended negotiations yesterday, saying the two sides were too far apart on some critical issues. With thousands of Canadians dying from substance abuse every year, politicians are debating whether to force individuals into treatment for drug addiction. This practice has already been adopted by several states south of the border, but it's very controversial. Julia Wong reports from Washington State.
Washington State has something Canada doesn't have right now. It can force someone with addictions into treatment against their will. So we came here to find out how it works. In Washington State, someone living with a substance use disorder can be assessed, then detained for treatment against their will. CBC News was invited inside one of the facilities where people are taken. Patients spend 5 days at these types of sites, and then they can be kept for weeks or perhaps months longer. The facilities are secure, and you need a pass to move within the building. Now, while there, patients take part in activities, sessions to learn about their triggers, and work on their discharge plans. Advocates say this type of involuntary care is important for those living with addictions.
When a person is in crisis, they really need someone to step in and really look at what's going on with them and get them help that they need when they're not able to. And that really is the spirit of Ricky's Law, that someone suffering from substance use should not have to suffer alone and be able to get the help that they need as fast as they can in order to save their life.
I've come back to say hi to the staff because, you know, the staff, they really did save my life. They really tried to get me sober, and they succeeded.
The law has been in effect since 2018, and it has its critics as well. Some say detainment is a slippery slope, and they say treatment is more effective when people want it. They also have other reservations.
What we know about substance use disorders is that it comes in all shapes and sizes, and there is pretty clear consensus that there's not one treatment that works for everyone.
Stakeholders in Washington State say there are lots of challenges with implementing a law like this, like having the staff to do the assessments, organizing the logistics to get patients to involuntary treatment sites, and coordinating with facilities to take patients in. They say there's lots of layers to a law like this, something they want Canadian lawmakers to keep in mind if they move forward with similar legislation. Julia Wong, CBC News, Olympia, Washington.
Russia is now threatening to attack critical operation centers in Ukraine's capital with a new intermediate-range ballistic missile. This comes after a massive attack on the country's civilian and energy infrastructure left more than 1 million people without power. Briar Stewart reports on Ukraine's efforts to keep at least some of that infrastructure operational.
Nearly 200 Russian drones and missiles might have been targeting Ukraine's energy sites, but near Odessa, homes were severely damaged too, leaving dozens of families homeless, including one who moved to this area after fleeing fighting further east. There is a huge crater outside. Everything here has been smashed to bits, said this man whose family moved from Kherson. Across the country, generators hummed as more than 1 million people were left without power right after the strikes. In the city of Mykolaiv, which lies less than 50 kilometers from the front, people lined up to get water at one of the only stations still operating amid the outages. Businesses were open, but the power was off. You can't try the clothes on because it's very cold, this business owner said, but we will get over this. This is the second major attack on Ukraine's energy grid in the past 2 weeks. Russia's president said the attack, which included the targeting of military sites, was in part a response to Ukraine launching U.S. missiles deeper into Russia. But Ukraine's energy system has been a top target throughout the war. Half of the country's generating capacity has been wiped out. This plant in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine now lies right on the front line. But before it could be completely cut off, workers disassembled it, sending the parts further west, where they were badly needed to repair sites, especially before the winter sets in.
If we will have temperature like -10, -15 Celsius for a long time, more than 1 week, it looks like we will need at minimum 8 hours per day outage.
It's a given that there will be more attacks on Ukraine's energy grid. What's unclear is just how punishing the winter weather will be. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
The World Health Organization is calling for better monitoring to help reduce the spread of H5N1 bird flu.
What we really need globally, in the US and abroad, is much stronger surveillance in animals. We need much stronger efforts in terms of reducing the risk of infection between animals, to new species, and to humans.
The U.S. has reported 55 human cases of H5N1 this year. Most of them involved farm workers who came in contact with infected poultry or cows. The strain was recently found in a pig in Oregon. Last month, BC reported what's thought to be the first human case in Canada. Health officials don't know how the teen became infected. She's a prominent author and speaker and an outspoken advocate for the autistic population. After the break, we sit down with animal behaviorist Temple Grandin. A Montreal shopping mall and office complex is under fire for using a popular children's song to keep away homeless people. Kwabena Odero has more on the controversy surrounding Baby Shark.
This Montreal mall is hoping that this notorious earworm will help keep people they consider unwelcome guests away. Baby Shark is playing in the parking garage, and it's even playing in the stairwell.
It represents something in people's mind in terms of torturing, like mentally, whether it's that song or any other one. I mean, just the measure itself of creating a non-welcoming environment for people and not making it safe for them anymore to stay, it is not a good solution long term.
With shelters having to turn more and more people away, Patrice Quintal says he turns to malls or metro stations to stay warm, but it's becoming harder.
They hire the security guards everywhere, so we can't go there. They treat us like garbage.
In a statement, Movement Desjardins, which owns the mall, says they started playing the music about a year ago because there are problems in some areas. Since then, they have noticed an improvement, but they insist their goal is not to be coercive, but supportive.
The fact that they have social worker is definitely a step in the good direction. The question is more like, why are they not able to accompany those people without having to put music?
The situation at Complexe Desjardins is only the latest case of what groups say are measures to push vulnerable people out of public spaces. Montreal's Transit Authority is closing this entrance to the Atwater metro station for the winter. It's a measure to prevent people from sleeping here.
We're not a shelter. We don't have any toilets. We don't have the resource to operate a shelter. We cannot fool ourselves by thinking the metro can shelter people, because this is not the case. This is not our mandate, and we need to develop more resource as a society.
I don't think anyone wishes to sleep in the metro station, but the reality is that there's no alternative. If it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's super cold outside, you try to find a place that's warm. And right now, it's the metro stations that are one of the last spots. So it's really important that they stay open.
The City of Montreal also sent us a statement. It says what the Complexe Desjardins is doing is questionable. And it adds that this is proof of why Ottawa and Quebec need to come to an agreement to free up $100 million in funding to deal with the homelessness crisis. Meanwhile, the Old Brewery Mission says that it's waiting on answers from the city too. It's waiting on the outcome from a committee that was formed earlier this year to look at local solutions to deal with the crisis. So far, the city says no announcement is planned.
That was the CBC's Kwabena Odero in Montreal. It looked chilly there in Montreal, and it is chilly here. And I have to say, I haven't been getting my walks in the morning, and the pup not super keen on that either when it's this cold. So I feel like tomorrow might be another good day to stay under the covers.
She's probably going to be itching for a walk by the weekend.
Yeah, right? But it's cold. She needs to wear her booties.
And some very cold conditions to the west as well.
Yeah.
And windy into the morning hours as well. Let's have a look at that dog walking forecast. So, yeah, another cloudy one tomorrow. I'm starting to sound like a broken record when I say I don't think we're looking at any measurable sun tomorrow, aside from a couple of peaks of sunshine. This is Murphy. Murphy's probably going to want to stay inside for the next couple of mornings. Thanks, Tammy, for sending this picture in. You can keep sending your pets to talkback at cbc.ca, where I'm eagerly awaiting them. So starting the day at -15 tomorrow in Winnipeg. Northwest winds 20 gusting to 40, so a breezy one. If we do see a couple of light flurries or even some periods of light snow overnight, which is certainly a possibility with some of this cloud cover, be prepared for some blowing snow through the day tomorrow, particularly in the open areas. We do start to see the winds backing off by the time we get to the afternoon into the evening, but still staying quite breezy as we get into the day tomorrow. So overnight tonight, we are looking at a clear sky to the west. We've started to see that clearing happening into western Manitoba. That's where we're looking at temperatures -25, -26 into Westman, factoring in the wind chill -38 overnight. That's frostbite on exposed skin and not very long in that 10 to 15-minute range, so keep that in mind into the early morning tomorrow. Into Winnipeg, -16 overnight, and -10s and -11s into northwestern Ontario. So quite a spread west to east once again. A couple of stray flurries yet to come. Some periods of light snow through northern Manitoba yet to come through the overnight hours as well. And we'll keep the breezy conditions as we get through the day on Friday. 20 gusting 40 for the start of the day. We start to see those backing off by the time we get to around the supper hour, but still you can see even through Westman some breezy conditions, maybe some concern with blowing snow as we get into the day on Friday. This particular model not picking up some of that light snow that's been falling through northern Manitoba. That does continue as we get into Friday. Pretty light in nature by the time we get to the afternoon hours. Thompson, we're looking at minus 12 by the time we get to the afternoon. Into southern Manitoba, a cold start tomorrow morning. We're looking at those wind chills close to minus 40 through parts of Westman, and even colder into Saskatchewan. And starting the day at minus 24 in Grandin, almost a full 10 degrees warmer in Winnipeg at minus 15 in the morning. Peaks of sunshine through the Red River Valley, a sunnier sky back to the west, and barely, Brittany, cracking the minus 20 mark into Westman tomorrow. I'll have your 7-day forecast still to come.
Ooh, stay bundled up, my friends.
Exactly.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
American author Temple Grandin has played a big role in changing the lives of people with autism spectrum disorder. Her advocacy work comes from a place of personal experience. She was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4. She says there's a lot more acceptance than there was a decade ago, but there's still work to be done. She spoke with Information Radio's Marcy Marcusa.
What is still a challenge? I heard you think that kids getting off screens is important.
Oh, we've got to get them off the screens.
Why?
Because they're not going anywhere. And also, if you want to design video games, that industry is going to get taken over by artificial intelligence. The other thing we've got to work on is making the transition from school to the world of work. We're doing a much better job on the early intervention with the little kids, but I'm seeing teenagers where the parents overprotect them, and they're not learning basic skills like shopping, bank account, just the basic stuff. And then another mistake that was made in the schools is taking out a lot of the hands-on classes, because the people I worked with that were visual thinkers that I know were autistic, people that are my age, I'm in my 70s now, they took shop classes in school. They grew up working on cars. And then a little tiny shop forms that makes some little tiny thing for a factory. The factory likes them, grows into a great big shop.
Autism acceptance has evolved, obviously, but it can mean something different to people on the spectrum. How important is self-acceptance for people living on the autistic spectrum, in your view?
Well, I don't know. I'm more interested in working on the jobs. Mm-hmm. See, the people that I worked with, I spent 25 years in construction. Mm-hmm. And worked with all kinds of people, mathematical engineers, shop people, and the career comes first. Autism is secondary. And the big thing I'm pushing right now is I want to see these autistic kids get into good careers. Another problem we have in autism is they've changed the diagnostic guideline. So you're going all the way from Einstein, who had no language till age 3, to somebody who has very severe disability and cannot dress themselves. It all has the same name. And the verbal thinkers tend to get locked into it. And I'm seeing too many parents getting the mindset that their kid can't do anything.
Got it. What about the mindset of employers? How does that need to change?
Well, there's a few simple accommodations. I basically need an external working memory. So let's say I get a job at Walmart. Let me make a pilot's checklist for the 4 or 5 steps it takes to log into the cash register. Because if somebody just tells me that, I have a hard time remembering. Or let's say you've got certain tasks you want me to do that day. Let me just jot them down in a pilot's checklist format. Because I do not remember very well verbal sequential information. Very, very simple accommodation. Another thing that's a problem for some people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, head injuries, and migraines is LED lights that flicker. And one of the ways to find that is to take your phone out, photograph the room in regular slow motion, you'll find the bad lights.
Your understanding of animals, obviously, and your connection with animals is also, something that many have learned from and watched over the many years. What's your sense of how that's evolved?
Well, an animal does not think in words. You see, I think some of the basic thinking on this, some people think you have to have word thinking in order to truly have thought. And animals do not think in words. In fact, a brand new study just came out in 2024, was published in Nature magazine, that words are not required for thought. Yep, that's now, like a lot of philosophers are very verbal, and they think, well, an animal can't really think because they don't have words. No, an animal can think, but they're sensory-based. Their memories are things they've heard, things they've smelled, things they have seen.
What do you still want to do?
Well, I kind of want to encourage the kids that are different, get them out there in good careers. That's what I want to do now. And then just my regular students, I'm still teaching at Colorado State University, my regular students, so I want to see them get into good careers they're going to love. I've taken book money and speaking money, and I've used it to put master's and PhD students through school. I have 23 students who've got master's degrees, PhDs with me. I got 3 PhD professors now doing animal behavior research, encouraging the younger generation, helping them to get out and do things, because we need to figure out how to solve problems.
Still ahead, Riley's back with a last check on our forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. There was a special birthday in New York City today. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade turned 100 years old. Well, the Radio City Rockettes added a kick to the festivities. Towering over the proceedings was the Tom Turkey Float, the parade's oldest. In all, there were 22 floats, 11 marching bands, and 32 giant balloons and inflatables. Santa Claus appeared at the end of the holiday parade that ushers in the Christmas season, just like he did in 1924.
I was mentioning some cold wind chills earlier for the Westman region. I wanted to give you a sense of what some of these numbers mean with our freeze times. So we are looking at, in Winnipeg at least, wind chills that aren't even quite this warm into the overnight period into Friday morning. We're looking at a -23 wind chill overnight. Still chilly, frostbite on exposed skin in over a half hour, but closer to that -40 mark in Grandin. That means frostbite on exposed skin in that 10 to 20 minute range, and we're looking at wind chills even colder as we get into the morning on Saturday. Your 7-day forecast looks like this: -12 in Winnipeg for Friday, -10 for Saturday. Bit of a bump on Sunday with some sunny breaks. Then I think we have our best chance for a mix of sun and clouds on Monday. Then we start to see things changing again. We get into a little more precipitation into Tuesday, and a high of -6 with breezy conditions by the time we get to the middle of next week. A pilot in Alaska is going out of her way to make this holiday season a little bit brighter for some of her neighbors.
Your daily lift comes with a drop.
I was visiting our newest neighbor, and they were talking about splitting a squirrel 3 ways for dinner and how that didn't really go very far.
So Esther Sanderlin grabbed a box of frozen turkeys, loaded up her small plane, and took flight. From the air, she tossed turkeys to friends in isolated corners of Alaska.
Esther said she plans to distribute 30 to 40 of the birds. She buys about 20 of these at a time, by the way, with the help of donations. And this is the third straight year that she's dropped turkeys out of a plane.
It's a different kind of turkey trot than we're used to.
A couple of things to unpack there.
I have a few safety concerns.
I was going to say that. What happens if they fall onto a roof or onto a person? A frozen turkey could do...
Hopefully they're fresh, and I don't know, maybe you catch them. I don't know. A couple safety concerns there, but I do love that she's trying to help people out.
Absolutely. It's the thought that counts.
Right? Have a wonderful night. Stay warm, stay safe.